Tyla's hand flew to her chest as the sensation bloomed inside her, a warm, pulsing resonance that made her breath catch and her iridescent skin shimmer with heightened color. It wasn't supposed to happen here, not on this alien world, millions of light-years from her home planet of Lystra. "Are you unwell, diplomatic envoy Tyla?" asked Commander Voros, her superior, his concern evident in the rippling patterns across his face. "I'm fine," she managed, struggling to maintain her composure as the resonance grew stronger. Among her people, the Lystrians, every individual was born with the ability to recognize their perfect match, their soul's complement, through a biological response that manifested when they were in proximity to that person. It was rare, precious, and considered the highest blessing from the cosmic forces. And hers had just activated. On Earth. For a human. "Perhaps you should return to our quarters," Voros suggested, his tone leaving little room for argument. "We can continue the diplomatic exchange tomorrow." Tyla nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she excused herself from the reception hall of the United Nations Earth-Space Coalition building, her eyes scanned the room, desperately seeking the source of her resonance. She needed to know who had triggered this sacred response. That's when she saw him. He stood at the far side of the hall, tall for a human, with tousled dark hair and eyes the color of Lystra's evening sky. He wore the insignia of the Earth Science Division on his uniform, and he was staring directly at her with a look of confusion on his face, as if he'd felt something too impossible as that should be for a human. Tyla made her excuses and moved toward him, trying to appear casual while her heart thundered in her chest. The closer she got, the stronger the resonance became, until it felt like a song vibrating through every cell in her body. "Hello," she said when she reached him, her universal translator working perfectly despite her flustered state. "I'm Tyla, third diplomatic envoy from Lystra." "Dr. Nathan Reed," he replied, extending his hand in the human greeting custom. "Astrophysics Division. I've been assigned to your mission as a scientific liaison." When their hands touched, Tyla couldn't suppress a small gasp. The resonance surged, and based on Nathan's widened eyes, he'd felt something too. "Is everything all right?" he asked, quickly withdrawing his hand. "Yes," she said, then more boldly, "No. I need to speak with you privately, Dr. Reed. It's a matter of some importance." Nathan hesitated, his professional demeanor wavering before curiosity won out. "There's a garden terrace on the eastern side of the building. It should be quiet this time of evening." Under the light of Earth's single moon, Tyla tried to explain the unexplainable to a man whose species had no concept of soul resonance. "So you're saying your biological detection system for compatible mates has identified me?" Nathan's scientific mind was clearly struggling with the concept. "It's more profound than mere compatibility," Tyla explained, her four-fingered hand gesturing emphatically. "The resonance is only activated once in a Lystrian's lifetime, if at all. Many of my people live their entire lives without experiencing it. And yet yours activated for a completely different species?" His skepticism was evident, but there was something else in his expression, a fascination that mirrored her own. "It's unprecedented," she admitted. "But undeniable." She stepped closer to him, watching as her proximity caused his pupils to dilate and his breathing to quicken. "Can you truly say you feel nothing unusual in my presence, Nathan?" He swallowed hard. "I feel something. But I'm a scientist. I don't believe in concepts like soulmates or predestined connections." "Neither do many Lystrians, until it happens to them," Tyla said softly. She reached out, her fingertips hovering near his face, not quite touching. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Nathan nodded. Her fingers gently traced the contours of his face, so alien yet increasingly beautiful to her. As she touched him, the resonance deepened, and she saw his expression shift from scientific curiosity to something more primal. "This is impossible," he whispered, even as he leaned into her touch. "And yet, here we are," Tyla replied, her voice barely audible as the distance between them decreased. Two beings from different worlds, joined by something neither of us fully understands. As the Earth's moon rose higher in the night sky, casting silver light across the diplomatic compound, Tyla realized that her mission to Earth had just become infinitely more complicated, and infinitely more important than any diplomatic exchange could ever be. 3 Earth days had passed since Tyla's resonance had activated, and she found herself both drawn to and frustrated by Nathan Reed. The human scientist had agreed to meet with her each evening after their official duties, his curiosity evidently overcoming his skepticism, but he maintained a careful distance that made her Listrian heart ache. So this resonance, Nathan said as they walked through the compound's arboretum, Earth plants mingling with specimens from various worlds, it's a biological imperative on your planet? Not an imperative, Tyla corrected, admiring how the moonlight caught in his dark hair. More, a gift. A blessing. We have normal relationships, marriages based on compatibility and choice. But the resonance is considered sacred. Nathan stopped beside a small pond, his reflection rippling alongside hers, his solidly human, hers with the distinctive iridescent patterns that marked her species. It's hard for me to accept that some biological quirk of your species could determine something as complex as a life partner. Is it really so different from human attraction? Tyla asked, stepping closer to him. The chemicals in your brain that draw you to certain people, the inexplicable chemistry your poets write about? Those are temporary reactions, Nathan argued, though he didn't step away. Not lifelong bonds. Tyla smiled, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. Perhaps the difference is merely one of intensity and certainty. When Nathan didn't respond, she decided to take a risk. Among her people, those experiencing the resonance were expected to be direct about their feelings. Nathan, may I ask you something personal? He nodded cautiously. Have you ever been in love? Truly in love? His expression clouded. Once. It ended badly. Because you weren't truly compatible? Nathan's jaw tightened. Because she found someone better. Someone who didn't spend all his time looking at stars instead of her. Understanding dawned on Tyla. So you fear the resonance might be wrong, that even if we pursued this connection, you would eventually disappoint me. I don't know what I believe about your resonance, Nathan said, finally looking directly into her amber eyes. But I know human relationships fail more often than they succeed. Tyla reached for his hand, her 4 fingers intertwining with his 5 in a strange but not unpleasant configuration. What if I told you that in Listrian history, there has never been a documented case of resonance-bonded pairs separating? I'd say that's statistically implausible, Nathan replied, but he didn't pull his hand away. Yet true, she countered, stepping closer until their bodies were nearly touching. The resonance doesn't just identify compatibility, Nathan. It identifies completion. 2 beings whose strengths and weaknesses balance perfectly. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the scientist battling with the man, logic warring with feeling. I need more data, he finally said, and Tyla couldn't help but laugh. Of course you do, Dr. Reed. What kind of experiment would you propose? Their eyes locked, and the tension between them shifted from intellectual to something far more primal. Nathan's free hand hesitantly moved to her face, fingers tracing the luminescent patterns that appeared on her skin whenever the resonance intensified. These patterns, he murmured, they change when you're emotional? When I'm near you, Tyla corrected, her breath catching as his fingers explored the contours of her face. They reflect the resonance. Fascinating, he whispered, his scientific detachment slipping. Tyla leaned into his touch. Among my people, this would be considered quite intimate. And is this? Nathan asked, his voice dropping lower as he slowly, deliberately leaned toward her. Yes, she breathed as their lips met. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration of alien territory for them both. But as the resonance surged through Tyla's body, all hesitation dissolved. Her arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer as his hands found her waist. When they finally broke apart, Nathan looked dazed, his scientific composure thoroughly shattered. "That was," he began. "Data?" Tyla suggested with a mischievous smile. "Compelling evidence," he admitted, a smile finally breaking through his serious demeanor. Their moment of connection was shattered by the sharp sound of the compound's communication system. "Attention all diplomatic personnel. An emergency session has been called. All envoys and Earth liaisons report to the main chamber immediately." Nathan's expression immediately shifted back to professional concern. "We should go." Tyla nodded, though reluctantly. As they walked briskly toward the main building, she felt a new tension from Nathan. "What troubles you?" she asked. "This, whatever is happening between us," he said without slowing his pace. "It's complicated. Earth-Listrian relations are still new, still fragile. Are you concerned about how others will perceive us?" Nathan hesitated. "Yes. But also—" He stopped suddenly, turning to face her. "Tyla, your resonance may be telling you we're perfect for each other, but my experience tells me nothing is ever that simple. I don't want either of us to get hurt." "Is that why you're fighting what's between us?" she asked softly. Before he could answer, Commander Voros appeared around the corner. "Envoy Tyla," he said sharply, his skin patterns displaying clear disapproval as he glanced between her and Nathan. "Your presence is required immediately." As she followed Voros, Tyla cast one last look at Nathan, whose expression had become unreadable. She had expected cultural differences, even resistance, but she hadn't anticipated how complicated it would be to love a human who was determined to deny what she knew with absolute certainty: they were meant to be together. 2 weeks after their first kiss, Tyla found herself in Nathan's private quarters, a modest apartment within the international section of the diplomatic compound. The emergency that had interrupted them had been a minor diplomatic incident between Earth and another visiting species, but it had kept them separated for several days. When they finally reconnected, something had changed in Nathan's demeanor, a softening of his scientific resistance. "I've been researching your resonance phenomenon," Nathan said as he poured them each a glass of wine, hers a special Listrian variety that had been included in their diplomatic provisions. "There are some Earth concepts that might be comparable. Quantum entanglement, for instance." Tyla smiled, taking the glass. "Always the scientist." "It helps me make sense of this," he admitted, gesturing between them. "The idea that two particles, once connected, remain influenced by each other regardless of distance, it's not so different from what you describe. And does this scientific parallel make our connection more acceptable to you?" Tyla asked, her luminescent patterns brightening with hope. Nathan sat beside her on his couch, close enough that their legs touched. "It helps. But I've also been thinking about something else you said, about how resonance-bonded Listrians never separate." "Never," Tyla confirmed. "What happens when one dies?" Nathan asked, his question surprisingly direct. Tyla's patterns dimmed slightly. "The surviving partner never forms another resonance bond. Many choose to remain alone. Others may form companionship relationships, but it's different." "So it truly is a lifetime commitment," Nathan said quietly. "Yes." Tyla set down her wine glass and turned to face him fully. "Does that frighten you?" "Terrify is more accurate," Nathan admitted with a small laugh. "But also—" "Also?" she prompted when he fell silent. Instead of answering with words, Nathan leaned forward and kissed her, more confidently than before. Tyla responded immediately, the resonance flaring so intensely that her skin cast a soft glow throughout the dimly lit room. This time, neither pulled away. Nathan's hands explored the unfamiliar contours of her body, tracing the patterns of light that followed his touch. Tyla's fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt, eager to feel his skin against hers. "Are you sure?" Nathan whispered against her lips. I've been sure since the moment I saw you, Tyla answered, her voice thick with desire. The question is, are you? His answer came in the form of deepening kisses and increasingly bold caresses. They moved together to his bedroom, where clothing was discarded and the final barriers between their species fell away. Their lovemaking was a careful exploration at first. Human and Lystrian physiologies were compatible, but with differences that required gentle discovery. Yet as their bodies found their rhythm, Tyla experienced something she had heard about but never truly believed, the resonance bond deepening, creating a faint empathic connection that allowed her to sense Nathan's pleasure alongside her own. Can you feel it? She gasped as they moved together. The bond? Nathan's eyes widened in wonder. I feel something. It's like I can sense what you're feeling. The resonance, Tyla confirmed, her body arching beneath his. It's growing stronger. Their climax, when it came, was shared in a way neither had experienced before, a feedback loop of sensation and emotion that left them both trembling and breathless. Afterward, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Nathan traced the slowly fading patterns on her skin with a look of awe. I've never experienced anything like that, he admitted. It was as if we were one, Tyla finished for him, nestling against his chest. That's why the resonance is so revered among my people. It's not just about finding a compatible mate, it's about finding the one person in the universe with whom you can share everything, even sensation. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still tracing idle patterns on her skin. I think I'm starting to understand, he finally said. And it terrifies me less than it did. Tyla looked up at him, her amber eyes searching his. Does that mean you're open to exploring what this could become? I think I passed open to exploring about an hour ago, Nathan said with a smile that made her heart soar. I'm not saying I fully understand or believe in predestined bonds, but I can't deny what's happening between us is extraordinary. For the next few days, they were inseparable outside of their official duties. Their nights were spent exploring each other's bodies and minds, learning the intricacies of their different cultures and physiologies. Nathan taught Tyla about earth music and art, while she shared Lystrian poetry that attempted to capture the experience of the resonance bond. It was during one such evening, as they lay satiated and content in Nathan's bed, that his communication device chimed with an urgent message. Dar. Read, came the voice of the Earth diplomatic chief, your presence is required immediately in the secure briefing room. Clearance level Alpha. Nathan frowned, already reaching for his clothes. That's the highest security clearance. Something serious must have happened. Tyla watched him dress, a sense of foreboding settling over her. Should I be concerned? Probably just another diplomatic hiccup, Nathan said, but she could tell he didn't believe his own reassurance. He kissed her quickly before heading to the door. Wait here. I'll be back as soon as I can. But when Nathan returned 3 hours later, his face was grave and his movements tense as he paced the length of his apartment. What is it? Tyla asked, her resonance immediately sensing his distress. There's been a security breach, Nathan said, his voice tight. Someone has been accessing classified Earth defense systems from within the diplomatic compound. Tyla's heart sank as understanding dawned. And because I've been spending so much time with you, a high-clearance official. They're questioning all non-Earth personnel with close ties to security-cleared humans, Nathan confirmed, stopping his pacing to look at her with troubled eyes. Including you. I've done nothing wrong, Tyla said firmly. I know that, Nathan assured her, taking her hands in his. But Commander Voros has been called in as well. And he knows about us, doesn't he? Tyla nodded slowly. He disapproves. He believes I'm compromising our mission by pursuing a personal relationship with an Earth scientist. This could get complicated, Nathan warned. If they start questioning the nature of our relationship. Let them question, Tyla said with sudden fierce determination. I have nothing to hide. The resonance bond is sacred among my people, and I won't pretend it doesn't exist or matter. Nathan pulled her close, his embrace protective and possessive at once. Whatever happens, he promised, we'll face it together. But as they held each other, Tyla couldn't shake the feeling that their newfound happiness was about to be severely tested. The bond between them had grown powerful, but would it be strong enough to withstand the suspicions and politics that now threatened to tear them apart? The interrogation room was deliberately intimidating, stark white walls, a single metal table, and monitoring devices that tracked every micro-expression on Tyla's face. She sat perfectly still, her luminescent patterns subdued as she faced the 3 Earth security officials across from her. Envoy Tyla, the lead investigator said, please explain again the nature of your relationship with Dr. Nathan Reed. As I've stated 5 times now, Tyla replied, her patience wearing thin. Dr. Reed and I share a resonance bond, a biological and spiritual connection recognized by my people as a sacred pairing. Convenient, the woman to his right remarked. This sacred pairing just happens to be with one of our top astrophysicists with level alpha security clearance. Tyla's patterns flashed with indignation. The resonance cannot be falsified or manipulated. It simply is. Let's set aside this resonance for a moment, the lead investigator continued. Have you accessed any of Dr. Reed's devices? Has he shared any classified information with you? No, to both questions, Tyla answered firmly. Nathan is acutely aware of his security obligations. The third interrogator leaned forward. Then perhaps you can explain why your biometric signature was detected near the central security hub at 0300 hours 3 nights ago? Tyla felt a chill run through her. That's impossible. I was with Nathan in his quarters at that time. Can anyone besides Dr. Reed verify that? The woman asked, her tone making it clear she already knew the answer. Before Tyla could respond, the door opened and Commander Voros entered, his skin patterns displaying clear agitation. This interrogation is over, he announced. As diplomatic envoy, Tyla has immunity under the Earth-Lystra Accords. The lead investigator seemed about to object, but something in Voros's demeanor made him reconsider. We'll continue this discussion through appropriate diplomatic channels. Once they were alone in the corridor, Tyla turned to Voros. Thank you for intervening. His patterns shifted to display stern disapproval. Don't thank me yet. I didn't come to rescue you, I came to inform you of the High Council's decision. Decision? Tyla asked, a sense of dread building within her. You're being recalled to Lystra, effective immediately. Voros's tone left no room for argument. Your involvement with the human has compromised our mission and created a diplomatic incident. I've done nothing wrong, Tyla protested. The security breach wasn't my doing. That's irrelevant now, Voros replied coldly. Your ship leaves in 12 Earth hours. Pack your belongings and say your goodbyes, though I strongly advise against seeing Dr. Reed again. It will only make things more difficult. After Voros left, Tyla stood frozen in the corridor, the implications of his orders sinking in. To be separated from Nathan now, when their bond was still forming, would be physically and emotionally devastating. Among her people, forcibly separating a resonance-bonded pair was considered a form of cruelty. She needed to find Nathan. When she reached his laboratory, she found him arguing heatedly with 2 security officers who were in the process of confiscating his research materials. Nathan, she called out, ignoring the officers' suspicious glares. His expression softened instantly when he saw her, though worry creased his brow. Tyla. Are you all right? They wouldn't tell me where they were holding you. We need to talk, she said urgently. Privately. One of the officers stepped between them. Dr. Reed is currently restricted from private conversations with non-Earth personnel. Nathan's jaw clenched. This is ridiculous. She's been cleared of any wrongdoing, hasn't she? We can't comment on an ongoing investigation, the officer replied stiffly. Then I'm invoking diplomatic privilege, Tyla said, drawing herself up to her full height. As a Listrian envoy, I am entitled to private consultation with any Earth official regarding matters of interplanetary importance. The officers exchanged uncertain glances before reluctantly moving to the far side of the laboratory, still within sight but out of earshot. I'm being recalled to Lystra, Tyla said without preamble, her voice low and urgent. The ship leaves in 12 hours. Nathan paled. What? No, they can't do that. I'll speak to the Earth diplomatic chief, explain about the resonance. It's not Earth's decision, Tyla interrupted gently. It's my people. Voros and the High Council. They believe our relationship has compromised the mission. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to process this new reality. How long will you be gone? When can you return? Tyla's patterns dimmed. The recall is permanent, Nathan. Once I leave, I won't be permitted to return to Earth as a diplomatic envoy. Then I'll come to you, he said immediately. I'll request an assignment on Lystra. There's a scientific exchange program being developed. It would take months, perhaps years to arrange, Tyla said, her heart breaking at the desperation in his voice. And there's no guarantee you'd be approved, especially after this security incident. Nathan reached for her hand, ignoring the warning look from the security officers. I can't lose you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not now. Not when I'm just beginning to understand what we have. Tyla squeezed his hand, her patterns pulsating with the intensity of her feelings. Come with me, she whispered. What? Come with me now, on the Lystrian ship. As my resonance mate, you would be granted asylum and citizenship. Nathan stared at her, clearly stunned by the suggestion. You're asking me to leave Earth? My career, my life, everything I know? I'm asking you to choose our bond, Tyla said, her amber eyes searching his. I know it's an impossible decision to make in just hours, but it's all the time we have. One of the officers began moving toward them, apparently deciding their conversation had gone on long enough. Meet me at Docking Bay 7, 2 hours before departure, Tyla said quickly. If you come, we'll face whatever challenges await us together. If not. Her voice faltered. I will understand. That night, alone in Nathan's apartment, the security restrictions apparently not extending to living arrangements that had already been established, they made love with a desperate intensity, each touch, each kiss carrying the weight of potential farewell. I don't know what to do, Nathan admitted afterward, holding her close as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. The thought of losing you is unbearable, but leaving Earth. I know, Tyla said softly, tracing the contours of his face, memorizing every detail. It's an impossible choice. And one you shouldn't have to make. If I had more time. But we don't, Tyla finished for him. The universe has a strange way of testing bonds, even ones it supposedly ordained. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers absently stroking the patterns on her skin. If I stay, he finally said, what happens to you? What does separating resonance-bonded pairs do? Tyla hesitated, not wanting to influence his decision with guilt. It's painful. Physically and emotionally. But survivable. That's not the whole truth, Nathan pressed, knowing her well enough now to sense her evasion. No, she admitted. Separated pairs often experience a kind of fading. The light in their patterns dims permanently. They live diminished lives. And for me, he asked. Tyla shook her head. I don't know. No human has ever formed a resonance bond before. The effects of separation might be different for you. Nathan kissed her then, a deep, claiming kiss that sent waves of pleasure through their strengthening bond. Then let's not find out, he whispered against her lips. They made love again, more tenderly this time, savoring each sensation, each shared feeling through their bond. As dawn approached, Tyla knew their time was running short, but she couldn't bring herself to mention it, to break the cocoon of intimacy they had created. Finally, Nathan spoke the words that hung between them. "It's time, isn't it?" Tyla nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. As they dressed in silence, the weight of the coming hours pressed down on them both. Tyla would go to her quarters to collect her belongings and then to the docking bay. Nathan would make his choice. At the door to his apartment, he pulled her into one last fierce embrace. "Whatever happens," he whispered into her hair, "what we've shared has changed me forever." "And me," Tyla replied, allowing herself to cling to him for just a moment longer before pulling away. Docking Bay 7. 2 hours before departure. As she walked away, Tyla forced herself not to look back. The resonance bond pulsed within her, stronger than ever despite, or perhaps because of, the threat of imminent separation. Whatever Nathan decided, she would carry this connection with her for the rest of her life. The only question that remained was whether she would be carrying it alone. Docking Bay 7 was a flurry of activity as the Listrian crew prepared for departure. Tyla stood slightly apart from her fellow diplomats, her belongings packed in a single container at her feet, her eyes fixed on the entrance. Every minute that passed without Nathan's appearance sent a fresh wave of pain through her resonance bond. Commander Voros approached, his patterns displaying what might have been sympathy on another Listrian. On him, it looked more like resignation. "It's time to board, Envoy Tyla," he said, his tone gentler than it had been in days. "He still has time," Tyla insisted, though her patterns dimmed with each passing moment. Voros sighed. "The human has made his choice. It's better this way, for our people, for the diplomatic mission, and ultimately for you. The High Council will arrange therapeutic sessions to help you manage the separation effects." Tyla didn't bother responding. Therapy couldn't heal a severed resonance bond, everyone knew that. The best it could do was teach her to live with the constant ache of incompleteness. 5 minutes, Voros said, before moving toward the ship. Tyla closed her eyes, reaching through the resonance bond, searching for some sense of Nathan. The connection had grown strong enough that she could usually feel his presence, his emotions, even from a distance. Now, she felt only a dull throb, like a limb falling asleep, the first sign of the bond beginning to suffer from impending separation. "Final boarding call for all Listrian diplomatic personnel," announced the automated system. With a heavy heart, Tyla picked up her container and turned toward the ship. Each step felt like walking through water, her body instinctively resisting movement away from her bonded mate. This was why separated pairs needed therapy. The physical impulse to return to one's mate could be overwhelming. She had just reached the boarding ramp when a commotion erupted at the entrance to the docking bay. "You can't go in there without clearance," came a security officer's voice. "I have clearance," insisted a familiar voice that made Tyla's heart leap. "Check your system, Dr. Nathan Reed, Diplomatic Exchange Program." Tyla turned, her patterns flaring so brightly that several nearby Listrians shielded their eyes. Nathan stood at the entrance, a large duffel bag slung over his shoulder, arguing with 2 security officers. "He's with me," Tyla called out, hurrying back down the ramp. "He's my diplomatic attaché." The guards looked skeptical but stepped aside as Nathan pushed past them, striding quickly toward Tyla. When he reached her, he dropped his bag and pulled her into a crushing embrace. "I thought you weren't coming," she whispered, her patterns swirling with joy and relief. "I almost didn't," Nathan admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "Then I realized something." Tyla pulled back enough to see his face. "What?" "All my life, I've been studying the stars, searching for answers about our place in the universe," he said, stroking the now brilliant patterns on her face. "But the greatest discovery I could ever make was right here in front of me. I'm not ready to let that go." Their reunion was interrupted by Commander Voros, who approached with a decidedly unamused expression. "What is the meaning of this, Dr. Reed?" Nathan straightened, keeping one arm firmly around Tyla's waist. "I'm invoking the Resonance Asylum Clause of the Earth-Lystra Treaty, Section 7, Paragraph 3. Voros's patterns shifted in surprise. "How do you know about that clause?" "It was a minor footnote, included only at our insistence. I spent all night researching everything I could about Lystrian law and our diplomatic agreements," Nathan explained. "As Tyla's confirmed resonance mate, I have the right to accompany her to Lystra and claim provisional citizenship. The Earth authorities will never allow." "They already have," Nathan interrupted, pulling out an official-looking document. "Signed by the Earth diplomatic chief herself. Apparently, they're eager to have a human scientist join the Lystrian research community, especially one who's proven his loyalty to interspecies cooperation so personally." Voros's patterns displayed a complex mixture of irritation and reluctant respect. "And your security clearance? The investigation?" "Closed," Nathan said simply. "They found the real culprit, a maintenance technician with gambling debts who was selling access codes to the highest bidder. My name has been cleared." Voros studied them both for a long moment before his patterns settled into resigned acceptance. "Very well, Dr. Reed. You may board, as Envoy Tyla's personal guest. Your official status will be determined by the High Council upon our arrival at Lystra." As Voros walked away, Tyla turned to Nathan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're really coming with me?" "Wild horses couldn't stop me," he said, then laughed at her confused expression. "Earth expression. It means yes, absolutely yes." Their kiss was interrupted by the final boarding announcement. Together, they climbed the ramp into the Lystrian vessel, Nathan looking back only once at the Earth he was leaving behind. The journey to Lystra took 3 Earth months, during which Nathan and Tyla's bond deepened beyond anything either had imagined possible. In the privacy of their shared quarters, they explored each other's bodies with increasing intimacy, learning exactly how to please one another, how to intensify the sensations that flowed through their resonance bond. "I can feel what you feel," Nathan marveled one night as they lay tangled together in the aftermath of particularly intense lovemaking. "It's getting stronger. The bond strengthens with proximity and intimacy," Tyla explained, tracing patterns on his chest. "After the bonding ceremony on Lystra, it will solidify completely." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Bonding ceremony? Is that like a wedding?" "Similar, but more biological," Tyla said with a mysterious smile. "You'll see." As their ship approached Lystra, Nathan spent hours at the observation windows, watching as the blue-green planet grew larger. "It's beautiful," he said as Tyla joined him. "Like Earth, but more luminescent. The entire ecosystem has bioluminescent properties," Tyla explained. "Wait until you see the night forests, they glow like your stars." Nathan turned to her, suddenly serious. "Are you sure your people will accept me? A human resonance mate is unprecedented." "The resonance is sacred," Tyla assured him. "Once they see our bond, they'll understand. Besides, you're bringing valuable scientific knowledge. That alone would earn you welcome." Their arrival was met with more curiosity than hostility. News of the unprecedented human-Lystrian resonance bond had preceded them, and scientists were eager to study the phenomenon. The High Council, after witnessing the unmistakable intensity of their bond, officially recognized their pairing and granted Nathan full citizenship rights. 6 months after their arrival, they stood together in the sacred grove of connections for their bonding ceremony. Nathan wore traditional Lystrian attire, his human form standing out among the gathered Lystrians, but his expression of love and commitment unmistakable in any culture. "Are you nervous?" Tyla asked as they prepared to drink the ceremonial bonding elixir that would permanently strengthen their resonance connection. "A little," Nathan admitted. The scientist in me is still amazed I'm drinking an alien substance that will biologically alter me. Second thoughts? Tyla asked, a flicker of anxiety in her patterns. Nathan's smile banished her fears. Not one. I'd cross the universe for you, Tyla. Drinking some glowing blue liquid is nothing in comparison. As they drank together, their free hands clasped tightly, the resonance bond between them flared visible to all witnesses, a rare and sacred sign that their connection was true and deep. The changes in Nathan began subtly, a faint luminescence to his skin when they touched, an increasing sensitivity to Tyla's emotions, even when they were physically separated. The Lystrian scientists were fascinated, but Nathan took it all in stride. It's worth it, he told Tyla one evening as they stood on the balcony of their home, overlooking the glowing forests of Lystra. Every change, every adaptation. To be with you, I'd change 1,000 times more. What about Earth? She asked, the question that had lingered between them. Do you miss it? Nathan considered this, his arm tightening around her waist. Parts of it. People. Some places. But I've gained so much more than I've lost. He placed his hand over hers on the railing, their matching luminescent patterns glowing softly in the twilight. Besides, I'm helping build the future here, the first of what might become many human Lystrian bonds. Indeed, Nathan's presence on Lystra had sparked intense interest on Earth. Cultural exchanges were increasing, and already there were rumors of another resonance activation between a Lystrian male and a human woman. We're pioneers, Tyla said, turning in his arms to face him. The first of many. Bridge builders, Nathan agreed, before kissing her deeply, their bond pulsing between them with a strength that defied astronomical distances and transcended the differences between their species. As the twin moons of Lystra rose above them, casting silver light across their entwined forms, Tyla thought about the improbability of it all, that her resonance had activated for a being from another world, that they had overcome every obstacle placed in their path, that they now stood together under alien stars, creating a life neither could have imagined alone. Some would call it destiny. Nathan might still call it an extraordinary biological phenomenon. But as they made love beneath the Lystrian moons, their bodies and minds joined through the resonance in a union deeper than mere physical connection, they both recognized it for what it truly was, a love powerful enough to bridge the stars themselves.